Alrighty guys, so our next species that I have out for us is the P. scaber species. We have got two variations of these. We have Dalmatians, which are going to be in this tub on the left, and then orange Dalmatians, which are going to be here on the right. Now these guys are really special because they actually Hey guys, this is Jess with the Tye-Dyed Iguana. I'm here today to introduce you guys to some of the isopod colonies that we have out on the floor for sale. Not all of these we have cupped currently, but these are all species that we have had out on the floor in the past, and I wanted you guys to get to know them a little bit so you know what to look for when you're looking for a good cleanup crew for your bioactive vivarium, or if you just want some fun isopods as pets. So first up here, I have our two dwarf variations. These can be really popular for crested gecko vivariums because they are not large enough to pose any potential danger to a crested gecko. There are some larger species of isopods that can nip at soft-scaled geckos, so those ones we typically want to avoid for those types of vivariums. So these are our two dwarf species. We have dwarf white and dwarf purple. It might be a little bit difficult to see them because they are pretty small. I actually do have some dwarf purples in this cup in order to make sure that they are breeding properly. Sometimes it's actually really easy to confuse these guys with springtails because of their size. So if you can see right here, there are some larger, they almost look like fruit flies, but they are running around in the dirt there. They're not as bright purple as you would expect, but you can see when you look really closely, they do have a bit of a purplish tinge to them. They love to hide, they love to burrow, which is why they are running away as soon as we get a glimpse of them. So these ones are really, really good at camouflaging and blending in with the soil. So if you don't want something super flashy that's gonna take attention away from your animal that you have in your vivarium or the plants you have, these guys are a really great choice and they are a really, really good cleanup crew. One fun fact about both of our dwarf variations is that they like really, really high humidity. I compare it to a pound cake because these are very heavy containers, and if you take a look in our dwarf white isopod colony, you can see the little mushrooms in there that they eat, but it is a very thick, wet chunk of dirt that they like to burrow in. Now these guys, because they're white, they're super easy to confuse with springtails, but normally if I flip over a few leaves, oh there's one, we can see some. There's a little one right here. There's also a few more down here that are kind of moving around. Oh, here we go. Here's a whole party of them. They're just munching on their mushrooms and their isopod powder. Obviously, all isopods are scavengers and decomposers, so they like to eat leaves and other organic material that is dead and decaying. So that is why we have lots and lots of leaf litter in with all of our isopods, so that once they finish their main course, which is the mushrooms and their special isopod diet, they can have some snacks, like some leaves to munch on. My next two that I'm going to show you guys are the P. pruinosis species. These are the powder blue and powder orange variety. I show these guys off together because you'll actually notice that there's a mix of both because they are just color variations of each other. So there's sometimes the genetics get tweaked a little bit when they have babies, and some of the powder orange babies end up blue and vice versa. So here are some of my powder blues. You can see they look almost velvety. When the light hits them, there's almost a sheen. Oh, and I just saw a little bit of a little orange one scurry under the leaves there. But these guys really, really love to hide in their decaying wood and cork. They are a lot more active than some of the dwarf species, but they're not quite as active as some of the other species that we're going to meet later. And these guys do like relatively high humidity, not quite as high as our dwarf variations, but they do like to live in pretty moist environments. You can see there's a lot of little babies and juveniles running around and some of the adults. And then in this container is where I have my powder oranges. As you can see, this one is a lot more mixed. There's a lot more powder blues that kind of made their way into here, but you can see we also have plenty of little oranges running around. And sometimes we might not have all of these species out on the floor at once because sometimes the colonies fluctuate in population. So some weeks I open them up and the colonies are doing really well and they're kind of booming. And then other weeks they are kind of dwindling a little bit more. But usually that's super normal. It's just the way that the population kind of goes. Sometimes they just need a couple of weeks to recover, which is why I won't have one species on the floor for a little while. Because the last thing I would want is to overharvest one of my colonies and for them to end up dying out, because then I wouldn't be able to have more isopods for you guys. So the next genus that I'm going to talk to you guys about today is the Cubaris. This genus is very, very popular. You might know some of the more flashy members of this genus, like the panda kings, the red tigers, and of course the rubber duckies, which are super, super popular. Unfortunately, we do not have any of those at the shop, but they are super fun to talk about and learn about. And these guys have very similar faces and body structure. The main difference is that these two, the Cubaris murina and Borneo, get a little bit smaller and their colors aren't quite as flashy. However, that doesn't mean that they aren't amazing additions to any vivarium. And a fun fact is that the Cubaris Borneo is actually a subspecies or a locality of the Cubaris murinas. So they can be mixed together. There's not very many noticeable differences between the two, especially to see with the naked eye, but they are technically different, and I think that's kind of neat. So you can see my Borneos in here. Some of them are a little bit lighter. There are different morphs of the Cubaris murinas. There are some called glaciers and some of the peach, I believe, the peaches that they're called. They're a little bit of a lighter color. Ours are just kind of a mix. They're just mostly wild type. These guys tend to reproduce pretty well at a pretty decent rate. They're really popular for like first-time isopod owners because they are hard to kill, and they are known for being really, really good at eating that organic material and cleaning up in vivariums. And because of their size and their more docile personality, these are also a really good choice for those soft-scaled geckos like I was talking about earlier. Alrighty guys, so our next species that I have out for us is the P. scaber species. We have got two variations of these. We have Dalmatians, which are going to be in this tub on the left, and then orange Dalmatians, which are going to be here on the right. Now, these guys are really special because they actually play dead. So I've had people, take a look in the cups and ask me, like, are these isopods dead? Like, why would I want to put dead isopods into my colony? But that's actually just a defense mechanism that they use when they get scared. So sometimes if you move their leaves around, you will think that they're dead because they're laying on their backs and they have all their legs tucked under their bellies. But after a minute, they tend to get up and start moving around a little bit more. Our P. scabers, they tend to be a little bit less active than some of the other species, but that doesn't make them any less valuable as a member of your cleanup crew. Again, just like we were talking about with the Cubarises, their size and their lower activity level makes them completely safe for any like soft-scaled geckos, frogs, or other more fragile species. Next up, this is actually my personal favorite species of isopod that we have here. It is called Armadillidium officinalis. So that is definitely a mouthful, but I remember it because they legitimately look like little armadillos. These guys can actually get really, really big. This is one at its full size, and they can definitely get larger than some of the other species that we've seen. And they get their name because, as I'm sure you guys know, most isopods like to curl up into a little ball as a mode of self-defense, but these guys can do it better, in my opinion, better than any other isopod I've ever seen. So this little guy is getting pretty calm right now, so he's just walking around on my hand exploring. But if we take a look in here, in the colony itself, we can see that when I disturb them, they become the most perfect little spheres that you have ever seen. And I just think that they are precious. Even though these guys seem pretty quiet and docile, they do have pretty big appetites. Now, these ones are not, I would say, they are not dangerous to have in the same habitat as like a soft-scaled gecko, like we were talking about earlier. They will be totally fine, but they are going to chow down on the leaf litter and other food that you put in there for them. So, for reference, a couple days ago, I added some mushrooms into their habitat for them to eat, and as you can see, a lot of them are completely gone. So even when I open this tub up and they're all just kind of sleeping, curled up in their little balls, I know that at night they have been chowing down on the diet that I put in there for them. Where are you going, little buddy? You gotta go back with your friends. And finally, the last species that I'm going to talk about today are the P. laevises. Now, these are the ones that I was kind of talking about earlier that get a little bit bigger, they can be a little bit more active, and because of their feeding behaviors, sometimes they're not the best for habitats for crested geckos or gargoyle geckos or frogs, because if they are not fed the proper diet, they can actually start to seek out more protein, and they will find that protein in your actual animals that live in that vivarium. So these guys tend to be better for vivariums including snakes or other like harder scaled lizards and reptiles, because they have more of a protective outer layer that is going to shield them from any little tiny isopod bites. But otherwise, they're really, really flashy. They come in lots of different color varieties and they're very active. The 4 varieties that I have to show you guys today are the oranges, the whites, the dairy cows, and the milkbacks. Dairy cows are actually very common. I have people ask about those all the time. I have a colony of dairy cows at my house, and I love them because they are always running around and they are always eating. I can put a leaf in here and my dairy cows will have it turned into the skeleton of a leaf within about a week, because they are very, very voracious eaters. One thing that a lot of people don't know is that even though isopods are scavengers, they still need protein in their diet. Obviously, we want to make sure they have lots of plant matter and other organic matter to munch on, but we also provide all of our isopods with a specialized mix of isopod diets that gives them a lot of protein, which helps them to grow big and to reproduce more quickly. These are the oranges. Sometimes they're pretty easy to tell by looking at the colors. These guys have had a lot of babies. I've kind of left this colony for a little bit because I wanted them to beef back up, and they are doing a great job. And the lavises can get really big. I have some dairy cows at home that are about like that big. So for a little isopod, that is a pretty decent size. Now, these are the white isopods. And you can even see, oh, there's a little munch in this leaf that looks like a heart. I love you guys too. And then in here we have our dairy cows. And these guys get their name because of their white bodies and their black spots that make them look like cows. And finally we have our milkbacks. Uh-oh, flipped you over, sorry buddy. You can see that they love to hide in their leaf litter. As soon as I move it, there's a bunch of them that run out. Alrighty, well thank you guys so much for joining me here today. I am super excited to talk about these guys, and I really hope that you come in and check out what isopods I have out on the floor soon. Bye!